So, happy Sunday, fun day. Fun day Sunday. It's cloudy outside. I feel good, and I don't even know how the hell I could feel good this morning. I mean, I did release demons, but it wasn't even that bad, actually. It was pretty nice. But yesterday, it was crazy because I had so many hives. Like, literally, I had so many hives yesterday. And that's what also fueled all of my postings, my artificial intelligence images, the storylines that I was putting together. What do you mean storylines? Well, all the storylines out there that we in the conspiracy world who came from the mainstream have played with, focused on, even stayed tunneled in, because sometimes you get lost and stuck in a storyline. It's hard to get out of it. Believe me, I know. And so I was putting together all the storylines that I came from as a child being raised in a specific household, to then what I experienced in the world, and then everything that I have studied the last, not only 7 years, but the last 20 years. And taking into account all the education that I have under my belt, the lifestyles that I've observed and even participated in, belief systems I played with. And so it's just like when you finally now see the same traditions done over again, Super Bowl, all the different holidays, and even the newest tradition, which is understanding climate change. Why is that a new tradition? Because people are seeing the afflictions going on during different parts of the seasons. And so they're expecting to get some kind of disease or cancer or chronic illness. So, I'm putting them all together, and yesterday, so all those hives that I experienced yesterday, all those hives fueled my making the connections, connecting the dots. And I like going back into history. I purposely studied the history that I know about that's on the internet and what I was raised with and all that. I purposely studied the history of what was told to me from like maybe 20,000 years, 200,000 years ago. And then working my way all the way up to present day. But when you think about what's really relevant, I wouldn't say 200,000 years ago is really relevant, because none of us were there 200,000 years ago. Even 20,000 years. Well, no one was down 6,000 years ago. But we could see proof through archaeology what potentially could have existed. And also studying geological patterns, climate patterns, even some of the written history that we're able to decipher, the codes of the past. But I like to take it back to what I have been exposed to as far as being a Gen X, sandwiched between the boomers and the millennials, but even also be exposed to silent gens who've had exposure to the early 1900s. See, I was born in the late 1900s, so weird, right? Or mid 1900s. But the 1930s, well, actually even the 1800s, because that was when the Oregon trains, we learned that in California, because California was the place where everyone wanted to come to. The fruit bowl, the bread basket, whatever you want to call it. Agriculture, biotech, Hollywood, religions. And I even heard back then when Roosevelt was speaking. Was it Roosevelt? Yeah, it was Roosevelt. Yeah, and he was making a speech during the Dust Bowl, and then it rained during that time of his speech, on top of it being so dry and dusty, and people were in despair, poverty, and livestock and crops failing and all that. So, everyone's pushing west going to Cannery Row, and that's where Steinbeck and all these writers, prolific writers back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, came out from those times. Dorothea Lange, who took pictures of women in the Dust Bowl and children. Okay, so then I'm thinking like, okay, so they were engineering the weather back in the 1930s, causing a huge Dust Bowl and drought in middle of America, right? Everyone's pushing west or staying east. And so the two coasts had a lot of the industry and the innovation and the people, and then certain people, then when the weather changed, and I couldn't tell you, now I haven't studied at what point did they start developing crops in the heartland. I couldn't tell you. I mean, I should probably study and figure out when the first major agricultural farm was developed. And that's the thing. It's interesting how the system pushed all the family of farmers to the west because there's no rain, it's dry, it's desolate. So what are they going to do? So they push west and go to Cannery Row. They go to San Francisco. They go to all the different places, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas. And then when the government pushed everyone west and east or whatever, then they bring in the climate and start watering the heartland. And then these huge big agra come in and start planting. So even back then, you could even speculate conspiracy, right? I have a very conspiratorial mind because I know nothing is organic. It's just have to figure out what's the intention. It doesn't have to be nefarious. I mean, it could be like, well, that's not fair. The government has access to all these things to cause people to make these decisions that would then bring in the favor of the government, but that's how the government works. The people don't know any better. So the government has to do certain things that would be deemed nefarious, like pushing people west or east, so they can go and develop the land without 50 million voices saying, oh, you should do it this way, you should do it that way, and I don't believe in this, and I don't believe in that. Okay, so, and we've now we have a huge corn industry in the middle of America. I mean, they didn't grow corn back in the 1930s, okay, during the Dust Bowl. So why is it now we're able to grow corn in 2020 or 2024? Well, because the system changed the weather to make then the heartland of America a huge agricultural industry. Okay? All right, so you're looking back in history and seeing, and I've read books and even watched movies of Steinbeck that's talking about the journey from middle of America to Cannery Row and all the immigrants. And of course, even before that, you had the 49ers, right? The gold rush, and even during that, the Oregon Trail and all that. And those are people pushing around, pushing west in the 1800s, 1860s, 1850s, actually 1849. Then you have the slavery, 1860s. I mean, history is so interesting, and history always does repeat because it's based upon what society needs at the time. And yeah, your government is going to be the one to pull the strings, as well they should, because do you think do you think you know better how to develop and maintain humanity so it doesn't destroy itself? I mean, you look at people who get a bunch of money and they spend it all like in 1 year. So you can imagine if the government has $1 billion and they spend it all in 1 year, and now you're left trying to find food and water and shelter and stability. So no, I wouldn't want the government to give the power to the people who would spend the money because they're like, oh, look, a shiny bauble. Oh, look, a new house. I mean, you look at the kids in the sports industry. They're giving millions of dollars, and look what they're buying. Fancy cars and shoelaces and pretty shoes and fancy clothing and a billion, baubles and shiny shit. And they're not really paving the way for their future is whatever industry they're in, basketball, football, or they're developing a new video game. So they're putting all their money in big, large houses and this and that. And that's why the rich, the billionaires, they're not giving their kids billions of dollars. because they know their kids that don't know how to manage their own energy, but even much less manage $1 billion, would destroy the world with it if given the opportunity, especially if they have issues that they're dealing with. Impulse issues, greed issues. Okay? So I have no problem with the government doing what it has to do to figure out how to keep humanity going. And they are also giving you a choice. All right, so then I'm looking at, okay, so now California has been overly innovated, overly sexualized, so much money, power, wealth, prestige, and superficial bullshit, and so many clones and redundancy, and people who are like metrosexuals shopping all the time have to look so perfect and so this to the point of destruction to themselves and their children. And you figure out, okay, now California is done. California is on the way to becoming relatively irrelevant. I mean, you're seeing San Francisco fall. Industries are pulling out of California. Shit, the 49ers don't even go play at Candlestick Park. I didn't even realize that the 49ers don't play at Candlestick Park or whatever stadium over there in Hunters Point, which is a really economically challenged area. 3rd Street in San Francisco is a very highly economically challenged area, and Hunters Point has always been infamous of shootings and drugs and homeless and ghetto stuff and whatever. So for Candlestick Park and for the 49ers to reside there for such a long time, now finally saying, okay, now it's going to turn into residential and office and mall complex. It doesn't surprise me that's the fate of probably California, turning into one big mall and residential and home mixed use type of thing. And then they moved down to San Jose area where I used to live, Santa Clara. Who's they? The 49ers. Levi Stadium in San Jose, Santa Clara County. And I'm like, what? Oh yeah, they're absorbed by the tech industry. They're one of the most expensive football franchises, okay? And so as California is becoming slowly irrelevant, and the weather's changing, and floods and tornadoes and mudslides and blizzards and cancer disease and chronic illness, and then Hollywood's leaving and biotech is doing whatever it's doing. Okay, and New York is full of people fighting each other in New York City, and the immigrants fighting each other, not sure where to go because they've been brought there and there's no place for them really. But I don't know what the plan is, but we'll figure it out. And of course we had 9/11, the World Trade Center is gone. I mean, that was a kickoff, right? If you want to be in the conspiracy world. So in the two coasts, and then Florida is just, eventually Florida is going to be swept away by hurricanes and hurricanes and lots of rain and climate change and rising waters. And you saw all the little memes that I put out there about the climate change that some people are denying. But see, they think the word climate change, they're thinking that it's made up because it's fake. Well, they're right. I mean, it's a contrived climate change. Just because it's contrived or organic, either way, it doesn't matter. It's climate change. See, my husband and I were having that argument the other day because he's one of those like, well, I don't think it's climate change. It's just propaganda. And I see it all over the conspiracy world, the right-wing conspiracy world. I'm like, Jason, you realize that there's the Large Hadron Colliders, there's Larger Hadron Colliders, particle acceleration. You're seeing the lines in the sky, okay? I mean, yeah, they're contrails. I mean, I'm sure that airplanes give off particulates that then cause influences in the weather patterns, and that's intentional because people intentionally buy tickets to fly from California to Las Vegas or wherever, okay? And you can also say maybe it is even more influential when government is actually adding more stuff to the atmosphere, causing conductivity, reflective particles that make the sun burn hotter and even make the weather kind of hotter or colder relative to the intention. And there's amplifiers and particle acceleration. We have Wi-Fi and all that. I mean, so yeah, climate change. Fuck. I mean, this is crazy. So yeah, so we have climate change going on. Okay. What was I freaking saying? I mean, there's just so much. God dang. I'm telling you guys, there's so much going on and so much like intent. Okay, so things are intentional. And you can pretend that they're not. And so with all that said, with the two coasts now becoming irrelevant, then of course Middle America is going to be the center point. And then you have the April 8th eclipse path that's running through 7 counties or 12 counties or 12 different cities or 7 different cities, okay? So that eclipse path is center right below, right above Kentucky and right at the bottom of Illinois, right there in the heartland. The X marks the spot. So then I'm looking at the Super Bowl, Kansas City, so that's right, the 49ers are like the most paid franchise, and they're being absorbed by the tech industry that's also disbanding out there in Silicon Valley. And then you have and then also the 49ers played against the Philadelphia Eagles. No, hold on, that was not Eagles, the Atlanta Ravens, before they then changed from Candlestick Park to Levi Stadium in San Jose area. Then the Kansas City Chiefs last Super Bowl played against the Philadelphia Eagles, and Philadelphia is where the Liberty Bell and all that, and then okay, and Kansas City won, Midwest won yet again. I'm projecting and speculating that yes, the Midwest is going to be the new trade center as the two coasts fall and Florida falls along with it. Okay, so then this Super Bowl of 49ers versus Kansas City Chiefs, I made that speculation that I think Kansas is going to win. Not because I think Kansas City has better players. I don't study the players. I don't care. They're all evenly matched. They can trade each other back and forth, but there's really another storyline to the football, to all the football allegory. Just like over here in Ohio, the infamous, famous rivalry between McKinley and the Tigers, Canton, McKinley Tigers and Bulldogs and the Maslin Tigers. That's always a rivalry here locally. Football Hall of Fame, the area of faith, family, and football here, the ritualistic Sunday stuff. Okay, so yeah, so I'm projecting that the Kansas City Chiefs win. But then on the other side of it, I could say that if the 49ers win for a reason, because they're closing out the old world, San Francisco. It's already done. California is going to become irrelevant, and Taylor Swift is a representation of California because a bunch of MK Ultra people, hot chicks that have been groomed for specific things. And you know that she looks like somebody from the 1960s. Zena LaVey, or Zinni, I don't forget her first name, but she looks like the daughter of Anton LaVey. And people can be like, it's just a coincidence, doppelganger. And so her then matched with then Travis Kelce, a burly Midwest dude. Not so much a metrosexual, clean-shaven, Brock Purdy type, but a tight end, no doubt, not even a quarterback, but a tight end that she's matched with, who happens to have ties to Ohio and also looks like Grizzly Adams, which was coined out there in 1974, 50 years ago, when the movie about Grizzly Adams. You can Google that. So I had so many hives last night, it was insane. So I'm making all these connections. The hives are giving me the power of connectivity. The hives are giving me energy. Yeah, and I was itching. I had my little back scratcher, and I'm itching here, and I'm itching there, and itching everywhere, whatever. And it's just like, whatever. What are you going to do? And I ate some pizza last night, and I had like 3 pieces of pizza, and I was eating hummus and crackers and naked blueberry juice, and I'm feeding the hives. And I released demons this morning, and it wasn't even that bad. It was not that bad at all. It was actually really nice. And so I had many hives last night. It was insane. I was itching so much, and that's a type of boil when you think about it. But I've already opened up my system so they weren't able to actually be boils, but when I scratch, I release energy. Okay, so we're in the Rosicrucian. We are Rosicrucian. The world is run by the Rosicrucians. All the different religions and spiritual belief systems all balled up into one, and then each segment or each part of each of the religions within the Rosicrucian that are appropriate for the time are coming out. And so sometimes it's Jewish mysticism that comes out. Sometimes it's Christian Gnosticism. Sometimes it's Hermeticism that comes out as an explanation for current events. I mean, we're we're on the precipice of what it is we've all been expecting. Let me tell you, I understand that 10 years ago, it was fun playing with the conspiracy world. Like, I remember I read one of my friends' posts, my husband's coworkers, Mike, and he's like, dude, it was fun, 10 years ago, 20 years ago to think about conspiracy. It was fun playing with those because it wasn't true. There wasn't a reality that we were seeing. It was like a porn, a fear porn. And so, yeah, I saw the attraction. Let me tell you, even back then, 2012, when I'm waiting for, the October surprise, and people in the conspiracy world were waiting for stuff with the Super Bowl, and we're waiting for stuff on the movies, and we're like, okay, it's going to happen now, and nothing happened. And so 2012, 13, 14, 15, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and nothing really happens. And so then people even in the conspiracy world are like, well, what the hell? We keep saying something's going to happen. Alex Jones keeps saying something's going to happen. It doesn't happen. Well, it's happening, but it's based upon if you're willing to look at the other side of the storylines. And even when what happens, well, there's no specific it. It's a lot of it's. That's some that you're aware of and some that you're not aware of. This whole dying suddenly is part of what is happening. What we've been warning you about. But see, remember, people now have a way to go and explain it away through, oh gosh, it's poison, it's this, it's that, right? But the whole climate change was the it that people were talking about in the conspiracy world. But even then, people in the conspiracy world don't even believe in climate change. See, that's the irony of it all, is that it has happened. It's been happening. It's not happening in the way that you think it's going to happen relative to what you think is the big event. Everyone's big event of giving them, vindicating them of all of their beliefs and fears is different. You really want to see the big event to finally confirm everything that you've been telling your friends and family? You may not even survive it. You don't want that big event to happen, but it might happen. Sometimes people's big events to confirm everything they've been in fear of, vindicating them and all the conspiracy world, is dying suddenly. They're not even around anymore. Some people are in the conspiracy world already experiencing that big event they were trying to warn everyone about that they never could even protect themselves from. But they're busy warning everybody, oh look, chemtrails, oh look this, oh look that, oh look, poison this, poison that. But they can't even fucking protect themselves. And so the big events that people are expecting have already happened for them. They're in it, and they can't even see it. It's pretty crazy. And so I say we're heading into some dark times. We're in it, but some people haven't even experienced those dark times because they've already used to it. They've already experienced the big event. Sometimes those big events happen like 20 years ago that they weren't even aware of as a big event. But it's going to be even more mainstream, right? Candida, weaponized fungus, mainstreaming mutancy. When that candida comes out of control and becomes something super parasitic, mycoplasmic, turns into an autoimmune disorder that was rare 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Now it's like almost everyone is being afflicted with some kind of autoimmune disorder. And they're treating it to death, making it stronger. So sometimes the big events that people are waiting for has already happened to them. So they don't understand what the hell's going on. Their big event's going to be a huge earthquake or some major mudslide or a fence falling over in their world. So even though we're heading into some dark times, we're in the dark times. The environment is that aggressive. It's been aggressive. And so I was picking apart the 10 plagues. So I remember last night I was itching like crazy. And these hives were more than they were the last 3 months. Like I would have him, maybe my husband comes home or not, I'd have maybe during the week the hives and then get over it. But when I first discovered them was like 2 years ago, a year ago, when it was cold outside and I had all this energy and I was chipping ice on the deck. Like, why would I chip ice? Why would I care about ice on the deck and taking a snow shovel or some kind of broom handle and just chipping ice, causing energy? And then I come inside and have all these hives in my body. Yeah, I was waking up the demons from the cold, the particle acceleration, and then that activity, that unnecessary activity that I was doing to myself. So that was the first sign that the hives were waking up. Things were waking up in the body, causing movement, causing growth, release of energy. So that was my first experience of the 10 plagues when you think about it, was the hives. So I'm at the point where it is like the boils. What was that? The plagues is water. The plagues are water turning to blood, too much iron, right? The frogs, the lice, the flies, the livestock, pestilence. My dog died. She's alive. She's a domesticated animal. She died. Pestilence. Because whatever antibiotics and everything else that's within her body, mind, and spirit came to surface. And I was fighting that, plus then all those operations that she experienced. So I've been experiencing the 10 plagues within the last 3 years. Okay, so I'm at the point right now where boils. Well, we'll have hail, we'll have inclement weather, wrathful weather, locusts, we're heading into spring, darkness, and the killing of the firstborn, children. So when water turns to blood, let's go to the first plague, right? When water turns to blood, it means too much iron in the water. Hemochromatosis. Cause your body to absorb too much iron from the food you eat. Excess iron is stored in your organs, especially your liver, heart, and pancreas. Too much iron can lead to life-threatening conditions such as liver disease, heart problems, and diabetes. How many people have liver disease? And they might be alcoholics, okay, so they're pickling their liver. They might blame it on the alcohol. I'm sure it's a major factor. How many people have heart problems, heart disease? Yeah, a lot of people. And also diabetes. Well, shit, those two seem to go hand in hand. Heart problems, diabetes, and liver issues. And even pancreas issues. Because they have a crappy release process. They're holding on to too much iron. So when you think about it, it's not so literal. Yes, you have iron in waterways out there that we've seen that the water turns to red like blood. But imagine a person with all these different diagnosable conditions because they're holding on to too much iron. Or they don't have enough iron. It can be on either end. So already people are dying from too much blood in too much iron in their blood, in their body. So sometimes it's not just literal. You have to also look at the symbology and apply that to biology, physiology, not just geologically or theology or allegory. Frogs have many symbolic meanings, including transformation. Frogs are associated with positive change and transformation. Okay, yeah, there's that side of it. But how many people are releasing tadpoles? How many guys are so highly sexualized they have to release their little tadpoles all the time? And so how many changes are happening in people's world? Fertility. Fertility is deadly. It's not just having babies and being highly sexualized, over-sexualized, but it's also the fertility of new diseases, new viruses, new microbes. Candida auris is a fungus infection that was found in Seattle Hospital. And people are saying that, yeah, it's becoming out of control. Yeah. Okay. And so You can read about frogs. Lice, symbologically, microbes, parasitic microbes that take over the body, cancer, disease, chronic illness, they lay eggs and burrow and infest. So when I had all those hives yesterday, it was, you could say it's repressed anger. Remember, the last couple weeks, you saw the metamorphosis of the anger that was pent up, that I was really aggressive towards people, like little lambs that don't know what the hell's going on. And sometimes you could see some of the worship. I'm not saying they're actually worshiping me, but I'm not trying to be friends with everybody on Facebook and be like, oh yeah, I believe in this zodiac. Yeah, let's exchange superficial things on. No, there's some pretty intense stuff, but I was definitely coming out very aggressive. Okay? And so, those hives that I experienced was probably all of that aggression the last 3 weeks. Like serious aggression. And who knows if I picked it up somewhere or if I harbored that within. So sometimes you don't even know where your anger or your anxiety and all that comes from, because you could be harboring it inside and the body's trying to release through behaviors. Or it's something you picked up because you're around influential people who harbor anxiety and cancer and disease and chronic illness. And some people are able to see, my husband is so evenly keeled. He can be around people and all that stuff. And he might feel pain, but he's so freaking even. And I think he's O negative. So he's able to get on the growth and the intelligence. And then his negatives, RH negative, is helping him release that energy. But sometimes it's through a lot of pooping. He's going through a lot of pooping. He's not like me where he's blowing his nose. He poops everything out. Okay, that's great. But that's how his body releases. Because it's the strongest part of his body to release. I'm all for it. Sometimes it may happen at weird times. But I release on both ends. You hear me blow my nose. You hear me talk about hives and stuff. Not even my armpits this time. My armpits were actually okay. It was all the hives in the body. So I'm releasing on all different ends. And it comes out in intelligence, making connections, even anger. Okay? And so, yeah, so the microbes, lice, is the cancer, disease, the chronic illness. They lay eggs and burrow and infest, and they manifest in behaviors, in anger, in intelligence, intellectual capability. And sometimes it causes people to go to the hospital and get it carved out because it developed growths. So flies. So now, generally speaking, flies represent something that is annoying or bothersome. So yeah, people are having issues. They can't sleep. They can't do this. They can't do that. They might represent a problem that you are trying to ignore or something that is causing you stress. Alternatively, flies might symbolize something that is rotting or decaying. This could be a situation in which you feel trapped or stagnant. So there's a lot of symbology around flies, not so much literally that it comes from maggots that are feeding on dead flesh, but also something that is bothersome or annoying that they have trapped inside, and that could be, trauma from the past and even fostering things that are traumatic because people are in relationships, they're in situations, they're in jobs, they're in areas that they know are not good for them and they need to get out, but for whatever reason, they're kind of stuck. They're trapped. And so the livestock pestilence, I experienced that with my dog. When the climate changed back in 2020, the first time that my dog was afflicted by the climate change was February of 2020, when I started writing this last book that I wrote. When I released the book that I actually was off the market, I started writing this next book. And I remember I was up here and I gave her some peanut butter, which is not poisonous. Didn't have xylitol or whatever that additive is that people are like, oh my gosh. I gave her a little peanut butter to keep her busy with her bones so I can write. And then she started shaking. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I poisoned my dog with peanut butter. But no, that was the beast waking up within. That was her mycoplasma. That was her alter ego that woke up. Because remember, I didn't raise her from a puppy. She came from the pound. And she was probably bred to be a puppy mill or whatever. Bred for puppies and then let go. And she had tumors and cancer prior to me. She underwent operations at the vet. She healed up and then they went and adopted her out. And so when that happens, when you've had cancer and tumors, lipomas and growths and all that, and it was treated, and so you're under a specific, the environment is relatively calm and the cures stay put, but when the environment changes like it did in February of 2020, the beginning of the pandemic, that beast in her woke the fuck up and started all of the shaking and the seizures and everything else that she was living through, but it changed her personality. It changed so much stuff. I figured I didn't know that the surgeries were going to be the thing that would just be the tip that would tip the scales. But if she didn't have the surgeries, could she have survived all of that? Well, obviously you can't know because she had the surgeries and there was no way we were going to go through that process. But that's the thing, is that I experienced the livestock pestilence. And I even heard on somebody else's page, I think it was, what's her name? Teresa Green? I forget. But anyways, she posted that over in Switzerland, they put in the 5G towers and the cows were bearing blind calves from the new aggressive environment. And so even domestic, your cows and your pigs and your pets are going to be afflicted by this aggressive particle acceleration. So livestock pestilence. People's traditional food source will be compromised due to the high energy in the environment. Of course, you can have lab-created meat eventually. You're seeing that already being introduced. They already had, IFL Science already introduced that people who say they love animals are also willing to eat them too. And people are like, well, I need my meat, and it sucks. Yeah, we've all been discussing that. And that's why, and I posted lab-created meat. So no one can play that game of, okay, then be a vegan, vegetarian, and starve yourself so that way you can be consistent in your beliefs of loving animals and all this other stuff. And that's why Bill Gates introduced lab-created meat, or somebody else did, so that way we're not harming animals and enslaving them and putting the fear of whatever in them before they get slaughtered. Okay? Animals are a sentient being, and maybe they shouldn't be held captive by anyone. And so people's traditional food source will be compromised due to the high energy in the environment, accelerating microbes attacking vital organs and five senses. Your pets are not surviving. The plague of livestock, also known as the plague of pestilence, killed all the domestic animals in Egypt. In biblical times, people's livelihoods would have depended on their animals, and so this plague would have been particularly devastating. A lot of people are emotionally attached to their animals. People with these gentleman farms, they don't need those animals. But they bought into, oh, my cows are organic. They're grass-fed versus corn-fed. But these farms people have with animals right now, trying to live way back in the 1800s, they don't need those farms. Yeah, we have factory farms, but even those are pretty devastatingly bad. I can't imagine factory farms are any different than people's gentleman farms. Animals still have, knowing that they're getting slaughtered. They're being enslaved to lay eggs and to do all this for whoever it is. So animals are not getting the best bang for their buck. They're being enslaved just like the humans. So yeah, that world's going to end. The enslavement of animals and children and people. You're not going to set your animals and children and people and friends and family free from your clutches of vampirism. The system is going to force them to be set free, and even you. All right? That slavery is livestock, is slavery. So, coming from this point of view, where I have no children, I have no animals, I appreciate the wildlife. My husband is relatively autonomous. Yeah, I can actually speak authentically about slavery. And when you're in it with pets that you just so love so much, and you have children, and you have all these people that are lesser beings in you that depend upon you. Yeah, it's a God complex. It's an overseer complex. It's holding people captive. When people depend upon you in body, mind, and spirit, and spiritually, okay? And so that's no different than holding a farm or having pets or owning a pet store. Yeah, the trade of exotic animals and puppy mills. Oh yeah, I understand. People want to have their pets and then somebody has to provide them with their pets. Well, and then they say they love animals and of course meat eaters too, which yeah, I understand. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when it comes to slavery. People are against it. They're against slavery, but they enslave their pets, their friends, their family. And so it's when you don't have any pets, you don't have any children, you don't have people depend upon you, you're basically on your own, you don't have a downline that you have to go and influence and sell them a protocol or a remedy. And your husband or wife is your equal. They're not lording their position over you and harming you in any way, manipulating you through intimidation, through mocking, through, all the different things that people do to intimidate. Then you can be like, yeah, now on the outside looking in, I see it. But you'd have to give up your pets. You'd have to be like, well, grandchildren or children, maybe it's time to do things on your own. There's that. What can I really do for you? Nobody can make somebody eat food and release demons. Even if you don't treat disease, that's not going to make a difference in their world. If they're holding on to disease within, they can't release it in the way that you need to release it, and that you can't tell people how to do that. They have to come upon that information organically and experience it and be like, okay, I guess I could deal with all the hives and the feelings of this and that and bloatedness and headaches and all that. And there's no way you could determine if someone has the capacity to deal with pain and suffering. And so then what are you there for? Who are you? Why are you there for? And then so you just have to come to terms with the fact that you might be the most influential thing and just enjoy the energy that they're giving you and that you're sucking the life out of. And that's just what we've been raised in. But when you don't have those scenarios around you, then you can see on the outside looking in where I'm coming from. But if you're in it, it'll be very difficult to see it. Because yes, animals and children and dependents give people a hormone chemical reaction that is so addicting that they'll fight to the death to keep it around. It's like a drug. People and animals and dependents are like drugs. It is a power like no other. When you wield power over an animal, over a child, over dependents, over even an audience that looks up to you. And that causes people to abuse their power. So anyways, boils, growth hives, so much heat under the skin, the body develops pustules. One common interpretation is that boils represent repressed anger. When we allow our anger to fester and boil over, a boil is an infection of a hair follicle caused by the bacterium Staphylococcus aureus. Boils usually resolve by themselves, but severe or recurring cases require medical attention. Medical treatments may include antibiotics and lancing. And I've seen people in the past that would have all these boils on their back, these raised bumps, and I'm like, oh my God, what is that? And you can't help it. You can't look away. You're like, whoa. Yeah. Hail, the wrath of the specific God causing storms and crazy weather. Well, we're also in that too. Category 6 hurricanes are going to be something of the future, if not now. And locusts. So I know over in Florida, the love bugs are like a locust. That plague in the springtime in Florida, oh my God. And then sometimes, I haven't seen it here in my house lately, but the stink bugs. used to be so bad, maybe in other places, but I haven't experienced major amounts of stink bugs causing so much of a pestilence. But locusts, the devastating behavior that makes locusts a powerful symbol of destruction, demonic activity, and judgment. Read on to discover the significance and symbolism of locusts in the Bible. In the Bible, locusts can represent plague or disaster. And you hear about that over there in the heartland. Well, here, or maybe over in Illinois and other places, they have locusts that come through. Okay, so you can think of anything that's like love bugs and stink bugs and any other type of gnats and all that, okay, represent a major something going on, a major energy causing those little insects to reproduce that quickly. Darkness, chaos, and the power of that darkness is not essentially evil. It is largely associated with death and destruction, captivity, spiritual darkness. Well, that's a lot of society out there who's just like, oh, nothing's happening, Jillian's crazy, ah. So they're putting themselves in the dark. Ignorance is darkness. People purposely want to be ignorant because they know the reality is so much worse than their fantasy. So they'll stay in the darkness and they'll shine their own light where they want. And I understand that. And sometimes I heard actually next year that New York might be going through some darkness because the grid is being taxed so much by the climate change that the air conditioning or the heat is being used so much more because people's immune systems are moving, causing temperature changes. And then, of course, the extreme weather is causing the temperatures to go either really, really hot or so cold. And I remember doing the J-Juice, how I was so cold for that minute. We all were, because it influenced our body temperature. And then we warmed up after a minute. Remember that? Doing so much the J-Juice. Okay, so they're saying that there might be not even just brownouts, like rolling blackouts, but there might even be a period of darkness. So expect that potentially in 2025, okay? And so the slaying of the firstborn and the sons, yeah, that's crazy. Why is it the sons, the firstborn sons? Sometimes they say in some of the definitions on the internet, just the firstborn, but then the sons. Why the sons? Because the sons, men, have a hard time evolving, like an extremely hard time evolving, so they'll destroy themselves through lack of evolution. And they're also the ones that seed the planet. Women have the eggs, men have the seeds. Those two go together, but you need women, to foster that growth. And I think I read somewhere on Facebook that there was a female flounder or some kind of, batfish that was able to reproduce. And there was no males in the tank, only females or something. Yeah. Anyways, the slaying of the firstborn sons. When you do not set the people free in the world and other people's worlds, if you are an overseer, or even set yourself free from the constraints of your friends and family's prison keeper mentality, some things will be sacrificed against your will, even if you don't realize it. When people resist evolution, something's got to give. In Catholicism, Lent is a type of sacrifice. In traditional Judaism, sometimes you need to sacrifice one thing to get something else. If you want everything and you think you can get everything, the system will force you to sacrifice something, and sometimes you are the sacrifice. Figure out what you truly need and prioritize. So that's why, I want to give my husband everything, but if you give somebody everything, they'll keep taking, and then somebody will get sacrificed. The weakest link will get sacrificed. And when you are the weakest link in a situation, then you have to realize you cannot try to keep up with those who are stronger than you and bigger than you. Okay? And then you have to figure out that you don't want to be the sacrifice. And so putting boundaries on people could actually not only save your life, but save their life as well. The people who don't understand that if you don't have boundaries, you will be the human sacrifice and potentially sacrifice somebody else inadvertently. And so boundaries are so freaking important. And setting those boundaries are so freaking important. But if you don't understand the power of boundaries, then you will become the human sacrifice, and so will those who you claim to love. Because you don't understand boundaries. They don't understand boundaries. Everyone wants everything. And they consume everything out of existence, even themselves. Okay? And that's why spoiled adults came from spoiled children. And when kids don't have boundaries, yeah, they'll turn into adults who don't have boundaries. And then what happens is then there'll be some influential force within their body, mind, and spirit that will be woken up by the environment. And since they don't have boundaries, they'll keep taking something to stop the pain. They'll treat themselves out of existence. And so, my world, the J world, is about boundaries. And it's understanding the need for pain, but how much is too much, how little is too little. And that does come with experience. Yeah. See, I'm thinking can people do what I do? Yeah. See, I was raised in academics, shoved down my fucking throat. Raised in academics. Okay? I was raised with understanding. I was raised with dealing with people's bullshit, pain and suffering. I was raised with being iced out, or raised with people, bullying me, and I was a bully too, and all that stuff. So can people do what I'm doing? Not everybody can. I want people to do what I'm doing. I want people to be able to do what I'm doing. But not everybody can. They know where their limitations are. And I understand that. Because if you've never been raised in academics, so you don't want to read and learn and do anything different, you don't have any real vision for the future, because you are the future, and it's going to be coming the past pretty soon. You're not going to be like, okay, one day I'm doing all this stuff, right? This person's doing all this stuff and everything's great, and now the world's changing and they're dealing with their own issues, and they have already developed a following of people that they have to maintain and cater to, and expectations and all that. They're not going to sit at home and be sick and read stuff and cultivate their brain, because that's not what they were trained to do. They were trained to be out there doing shit. Whatever it is. They weren't trained to sit at home and read stuff. They weren't trained to sit at home and be sick and not treat sickness. They weren't. That's the thing is that, yeah, I had a lot of isolation as a child, but it needed to happen. So that way I can handle being on my own now without being around so many influences that will cause microbial anaphylaxis, as well as being caught in the crossfire of somebody supernovaing because their demons were released. So I got really lucky being isolated as a child. Really fucking lucky. And I didn't purposely try to not be isolated and put myself in family and situations and friend situations that were stagnant. There were plenty of times I could have stayed in places and just got rooted into an influence, into a culture, but I never did. I had plenty of chances too, but I couldn't get past things that didn't agree with me spiritually. I didn't even know that I wasn't agreeing with it. I just left and fuck this, I'm out of here. This is not working. The fact that I'm here in Ohio, moving from west to east, doing the opposite of the 1930s Dust Bowl, Cannery Row, Steinbeck. What do they call it? Reverse Steinbeck? I said, screw you, California. Bunch of metrosexuals, intolerant people who are all about, privilege and what is it? Greed and power and abuse of power. I'm done with you, California. I'm done with the people. Done with all the snooty, stuck-up bullshit that goes on in California. And I'm coming to something a little bit more hometown. Faith, family, and football called Ohio. And it has its own drawbacks and its own benefits. But the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. Okay? The benefits outweigh the drawbacks because it's really inexpensive. People are mostly polite. And I don't see too much snooty, stuck-up bullshit over here. I don't see too many metrosexuals out here who are all about glam and all. Yeah, you have your little parts of society that are like that. The guys in their polo outfits and playing that game, but they're few and far between. Okay, so Anyways, God, I went off on a tangent. So figure out what you truly need and prioritize so you can save yourself. Because we're in that time now where things that are not priority are being sacrificed. Okay, so I put in Maroon 5 Sunday morning. I had that in my mind for some reason. Yeah, today I feel like I look okay today. I thought yesterday I would look like I was a little monster. And so, yeah, a few helicopter plane crashes with people on their way to Las Vegas, also in Sin City. I was listening to the NBC Nightly News this morning early, and they recap, whatever death and destruction. And yeah, 6 people died in a plane crash from Palm Springs to Las Vegas. Is right on the heels of the Super Bowl, right? Private plane crash, 2 passed in Florida, Ohio to Florida, lost both engines. How does that happen? Who knows? Chopper from California to Las Vegas crashed. Nothing is coincidental, definitely ritualistic, but you can believe everything is supposed to happen because airplanes just randomly crash, losing both engines. Sacrificial body count is rising higher and higher right before the big superb owl. That's why I don't want to think that I'm so privileged, because those who have money to burn will put themselves in positions. You don't know what's going on in the skies above. That's the thing you have to realize. You don't know what's going on in the skies above. You don't know who the players are down below. You have no idea who's working against you or for you, so you stay mostly on your own. Because the more you get into influential parts of society, you have no idea who the plants are, who does what. I mean, those 3 guys that died out there in, Kansas and Missouri, I forget. Anyways, they died out there in the backyard. 3 guys died in the backyard, froze to death. How the hell does that happen? Planes crashing. Be humble. Listen to indicators. Pay attention. You have no idea who's working for you or against you. Pretty crazy we are living what we have been trying to warn you about for the last 20 years. We're pretty much at the 11th hour. The clock will be striking midnight pretty soon. When that happens, I hope you are mentally, physically, and spiritually prepared. Sunday football has always been a prayer session during the football season. If people are not praying to a god in a church, they're praying to the football gods in the stadiums and arenas. That's why it's called Football Sunday or Sunday Football. Happy or highly ritualistic. I should know I do live in Football Town, the Football Hall of Fame in Ohio. Just right down the street, the Football Hall of Fame. It's crazy. Over here, it's faith, family, and football. And it's children who are always recruited into the sports industry, of course, and also into the military. Children recruited into the sports industry, the military, academics, entertainment. Well, why? Of course, children, right? You wouldn't recruit an adult because they've already been programmed in a specific way. But that was how society was constructed. Children were either going to make the future or break the future, or become cannon fodder for somebody else's war, or be used as a tool to be an entertainer. Okay? The sacrificial lambs. So if you survive your childhood, you have a chance. Doesn't mean you'll live, just means that you have a chance to redirect the intentions. And so, being in the Midwest, very few faults are in Ohio are visible. But yeah, there is the New Madrid fault line. But the edge of that is in southwest Ohio near Cincinnati. So those are in Illinois and all those places that's west where the New Madrid fault line, I think it broke in like 3 places. That's what they were saying. That's why there's the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, that might be something to consider and be aware, okay, of where actually the fault line results, the New Madrid fault lines in the middle of the U.S. So very few faults in Ohio are visible at the surface, and no other surface faults in Ohio are known to be associated with historic earthquakes. Furthermore, none of these faults exhibit evidence of movement during recent Holocene time. Most of them probably have not been active since the Paleozoic. Then Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee and a number of other lakes were formed by disruption of the ground. Although Ohio is on the fringe of the New Madrid seismic zone, it is obvious from contemporary accounts the damage occurred in southwestern Ohio, particularly in Cincinnati. Okay, so I like where I'm at in northeast Ohio. I like my neighborhood. I'm not all the way up in Cleveland in the snow belt, and I'm not so below down there where there's tornadoes and potential fault lines. Okay? I don't know, man. It's kind of eerie exactly how I ended up here. It's really, really, really eerie. Tectonic plates under the Pacific Ocean is being torn apart. Okay, so you have the Atlantic currents that are having issues that are going to cause a mini ice age in Europe. And then you have the tectonic plates under the Pacific Ocean being torn apart. You can only imagine what kind of earthquakes, the big one, that may happen in our lifetime. And so I did a reel on all of those posts of the climate change in California and also the whole West Coast, Pacific Northwest, Florida, the Eastern Seaboard, and of course the Midwest would be the relatively safer place. But how do you tell a bunch? That's why I'm glad I'm not out there so popular. I have a very small following, very small. And that was done for a reason, because how do you tell 33 million or whatever million people in California that, you guys should probably move, but you know how people can't. I understand that. They can't move. They think they'll be able to survive it. Do you even know what it is you might be surviving? Do you see what's going on? The floods, the hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, fires. You're getting all of the above over there in California now, but it's exciting, right? It's exciting. You're in a lot of company. Yeah, I wouldn't be in California right now, but you can't tell someone that because it hasn't happened yet. When it happens, it might be too late, but people are waiting for the proof, and they'll watch it. They'll watch the cracks of the fault lines go right through their house, and be like, still staying put. Be like, okay, this is me, the last thing. Oh, this is just the beginning, right? That's the weird thing about humans, is that they could see the evidence and the proof right in front of them, and they still wouldn't move. It's like a deer in headlights. They could see all the indicators in the world, and they still would not move. Like a deer in headlights. It's a trip to watch the dynamics of humans when they don't have the capacity to really listen to indicators, when they have been under the influence of the cures and the distractions and the drugs and the alcohol and even the fear porn. And they still will not save themselves, even though they're being shown every single danger that's going to happen soon, if not sooner. They still will not do anything to change. And so when the Butler County Sheriff came out the other day and was telling everyone what was going on, and now you're seeing what I did back in the 90s in the Air National Guard at Moffett Field when I was in the military as an Air National Guard member, a type of reservist. Butler County doing hazmat training. We were dressing up in chem warfare gear and suits, doing the Operation Readiness exercise for the Operation Readiness inspection from the Inspector General back then in the 90s. Going off to summer camp in the Air National Guard, going to different Air Force bases, Tyndall and the other place over there in Reno area or Nevada, and doing those Operation Readiness, Operation, inspection, hazmat training, working in chem warfare gear. Oh, I hated it because it was so stifling, especially when you're doing that in Tyndall Air Force Base in the 90s when O.J. Simpson was running away from everybody. And I'm here at summer camp at Tyndall, and we're doing all the Operation Readiness and Operation whatever. And then you see people like going like look at their little TV or radio, and they're like, oh, look, oh, here. O.J. Simpson was running from the police because of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald, whatever his name is. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And now you hear that O.J. Simpson has been diagnosed with cancer. And so as part of the Greater Cincinnati Hazmat Unit, ERS members had refresher training today on the Emergency Response Guidebook, personal protective equipment, including donning and doffing gear and performing mask fit testing. For what? Why? Well, the sheriff told you what was going to happen. And so I'm just in my head yesterday watching, Grey's Anatomy. Gosh, I just like these binge shows, Grey's Anatomy. Because I know the programming, and I'm just like, no wonder people can't get out of their own programming because it's been embedded for at least 20 years. So Steinbeck in reverse, the great exodus from the West pushing east, going back to what used to be the Dust Bowl, and now the Corn Bowl and the Fruit Basket and the whatever, otherwise known as the Trail of Oregons, heading to the Midwest. The Trail of Oregons. What about the Oregon Trail, right? But that was back in the 1840s, the Oregon Trail. But now I put in the prompt, a caravan of cars with people's couches and their mirrors and all of their, their expensive items from California, taking it to the Midwest. A caravan of them coming from California to Kansas, right? To the Kansas state line. And I put in Hot Pockets too, right? Because that was, the Oregon Trail and all that. So yeah, it's my own humor, right? The Grapes of Wrath, right? And so I said, California would be the new Dust Bowl. The heat will be so extreme, crops and people will have a hard time surviving. So Fresno, the Central Valley's drying up. So much heat, so much rain, the earth won't be able to absorb moisture, resulting in flash floods and mudslides. Everything has flipped. John Steinbeck in Rewind. The system modified the weather even back in the 1930s. They knew how to control the weather even back then. So the valley's crops are getting sunburned in this extreme heat over there near Fresno. Fresno. And the Grapes of Wrath, right? Everything has flipped. Now it's time to come to the Midwest if you can. However, let's take a look at history. Before the Midwest was developed, it pushed people to the coasts. And it was purposely for a reason. Okay, so on the Great Plains, however, dust storms were so severe that crops failed to grow, livestock died of starvation and thirst, and thousands of farm families lost their farms and faced severe poverty. So before that, before the 1930s, you had the 1800s, right? The Oregon Trail, the prairie wagons and all that. And then, of course, before that, it was the frontier of dealing with the Indians. And then you had, Andrew Jackson, the Trail of Tears, and all the farms and all that. And then they controlled the weather and caused, in the 1930s, some great crazy storms and all that. And so now, driven by the Depression, drought, and the Dust Bowl, thousands upon thousands left their homes in Oklahoma. And that's where you get even the old movies in the 1960s. Oklahoma, the musicals, right? Texas, Arkansas, and Missouri. Over 300,000 of them came to California. And yes, John Steinbeck, Henry Rowe, Tortilla Flat. They looked to California as a land of promise. Not since the gold rush had so many people traveled in such large numbers to the state. And so John Steinbeck wrote about people's travels during the Great Depression, during the Dust Bowl. Henry Rowe, Grapes of Wrath, Tortilla Flat, and the programming of people, California biotech agriculture. Then you had Silicon Valley, and the orchards and the agriculture turned into then biotech, and a place where everyone from all over the world came and descended upon Silicon Valley to go and develop the latest and greatest technology in the tech world, as far as computers and internet, but also biotechnology. And of course, the propaganda machines called Hollywood and the starlets and the MK Ultra and all of that. And so Hollywood, entertainment, politics, science, of course, all the religions, the Christian revival. Okay? And yeah, category 6 hurricanes will be in the future. I'll read this, yeah. If you don't believe in climate change, you're not paying attention to the conductive, reflective material particulates that line the skies daily. You don't understand the significance of large hadron colliders and even larger hadron colliders. Wireless is not leaving the world, as we always will have wireless. We will have cell towers forever. So I was asking my husband, well, if you really think that we're going to go back to the 1800s, so you defend America and the free, right? The first thing would be to remove all the cell towers. And is Trump going to do that? Is Trump going to save you from all this electronic stuff? And no, that would be the first thing, would be he'd be like, maybe it's time to dismantle CERN. Okay, if Trump was going to save you, it'd be time to dismantle all of the cell towers and then take away all the cell phones, no more computers, no more Best Buy, no more internet. We'll go back to 1860, go back to farms and campfires. That's not going to freaking happen. Trump's not introducing that. Him and I go back and forth because he comes from that point of view of like, Trump is going to save us. And I'm like, oh, really? Oh, really? But I understand, because people are fighting for the old world that doesn't exist anymore. We're in a totally different world, and you have to be able to evolve. And so, wireless is not leaving the world, as we will always have wireless. We will have cell towers forever. The system is going through the process of potential 15-minute cities. I'm not saying everything is going 100% electric cars right off the bat, but we're heading into it. Okay? We may not even have everyone having an electric car, because who wants one? So when you have 15-minute cities and everyone's working from home or going on a high-speed rail to their rising towers of whatever, what is it? The high rise of their buildings of going to work, okay. But high-speed rails, human habitation zones, connecting one metropolis to another, and conditioning people that significant changes will be made even to their cities and counties, gradually, progressively, and then increase in intensity. Things will be broken for it to be fixed later on. Don't let people scare you into saying they're breaking things and not fixing them, which is not true. So I read somewhere, one of people that used to follow me in the Hebrew world or the Yah world saying, oh yeah, they're purposely breaking things, they're not going to fix it. You don't know if they're fixing it already. I fixed myself. They're fixing certain things. They're retrofitting even the little highway that comes in between 62 where I live. They took down a bunch of houses that were not needed. They added another lane to the highway. They added 2 lanes with something in the middle. They've widened the lanes. So yeah, they broke down all the houses, and they are reinforcing the roads. So things will be broken for it to be fixed later on. Don't let people scare you into saying that they're breaking things and not fixing them, which is not true. I never voted for Biden or Trump, but Biden's campaign is Build Back Better, and it takes time. Just like the J world. Nothing is instantaneous, and you have to go through hell to get relative peace, not rest in peace. I can say I rebuilt back better the last 7 years. But there are people who refuse to build their own bodies back better, and so they want to put the fear that nothing will get fixed because they don't want to change, and they won't fix themselves. Kind of like when you're in a construction zone, and there's only one room in the house that you can go to or use, and even if you have a hot plate because your kitchen is being torn down, that's kind of like we're in a construction zone. Okay? And I would avoid mass transit. I would avoid large gatherings. I would avoid a lot of things that would cause someone to pick off a lot of people in a short amount of time. And I would avoid traveling. Because who's to say, like, they remember, Leave the World Behind on Netflix, and you're watching these airplanes while you look on the news. And even in Audrey's area, what is it? Scotland or England or something, helicopters crashing in places. We've had that over here. Okay? So, in my opinion, I would avoid mass transit if possible. I would avoid large gatherings with diverse company, not just because of micros. The FBI talks about so much chatter of people doing harm to people. People were warned. People are being warned. Stay home and stay safe. Only go to work and still be very cautious. The system is trying to tell you without telling you. Read between the lines. Okay, so I wouldn't go to the Super Bowl in Vegas. And you know how much people that can hold in that stadium? 65,000. 6 and 5 is 11. Okay, we're in a current reconstruction project. Remember back in the Civil War, after the Civil War, remember Gone with the Wind? Then came Reconstruction. Well, we have yet to see the devastation that's going to happen. And you hope you can survive the devastation and then the reconstruction. All construction zones are dangerous, only meant for the strong to deal with the construction and those who are building through the reconstruction. So treat your society as if it was a construction zone, and only let those who are really adept at what they're doing deal with what's going on. Listen to your government. on certain things and pick and choose what you listen to your government on. But if they say evacuate, evacuate. If they say stay home, don't be out there, stay home, do not be out there. There's a reason. There's a reason. So if you're in California, if I were you, I would move to the Midwest, somewhere near the Great Lakes if possible, because stuff will happen in our time. I think, what did Jeff say? It's been happening, Jillian, for years, but you're referring to it being on a larger scale and more frequent. Yes, I said even major catastrophic. And he says, oh, I know there's what these sociopaths are capable of, absolutely horrific. And then he says, wait until the people who took the shots are triggered by the 5G waves coming up. Oh, yeah, they already are. That's the died suddenlies. Okay? It's not just them, it's anyone else who holds that much microbial, mycoplasmic opposing forces within. So as far as countries that will survive climate change, they are introducing sustainability models, and that's an incremental thing based upon the industries and the things they have to release from that society and also obtain and change. And so right now the US is going through their own retrofitting of climate change and sustainability. So other countries like the Northern European countries have already gone through their retrofitting of sustainability, and we have yet. We're at almost at the bottom of the list because we're going through it. Okay? We're going through it. And it's just begun. So, America is a state of mind. The United States of mind. USA is at the bottom of the list because we're just starting to go through it. And so I said, I'm committed to surviving all this climate change in America, even if it's not the same configuration in the future. And so right now, those who are more sustainable than we are, Norway, Finland, Switzerland, Denmark, Singapore, Sweden, Iceland, New Zealand, Germany, and United Kingdom. So some of you guys are way ahead of us as far as sustainability, surviving climate change. We're just at the precipice. Okay? The CCPI ranks the following countries as the best at climate protection performance. The CCPI has left the first 3 positions empty to reflect that no country performance is high enough to warrant a podium place, but it seems that Denmark, Sweden, and Chile, Morocco, India, Estonia, Norway, United Kingdom, Philippines, Netherlands, and Portugal. In the 11th, the UK ranks 5th in Europe and 2nd behind only India of G20 countries. The US, meanwhile, languishes in 52nd place, comfortably in the bottom quartile of the 60 countries assessed. All right, so we're still way behind the 8 ball. We got a lot of devastation to go through, okay, as far as the US. And so every single one of us is run by a storyline so the world makes sense. So many of us have been living by certain storylines of the world. Some people live by the Bible. Some people live by their family and group associations coupled with their cultural traditions. Some people know there is a formula to this world. There are very specific purposes to the decades that we go into. I like taking everything that I've learned for the last 50 years and weave it all together and develop my own storyline. When you understand what makes something live or pass away or suffer from disease, it's not hard to develop a storyline based upon every single storyline that's out there and even the new ones. And that's why I'm not too concerned or too worried, like Mike Harris was observing, that I'm not too worried, I'm not scared. Well, first of all, I saved myself. I have a protocol that I can survive the microbes that are causing then the different disease. I can release demons, eat food, rest, and sleep and all that stuff, and stay out of harm's way. And I can't control if an atomic bomb comes to my town and obliterates us. I'd be dead. So if I can survive the few, geographical, climatological skirmishes that we may have to go through, okay, that's great. I'll do the best I can based upon what information is given to me at the time and what I've learned how to protect myself during tornadoes and hurricanes and storms and floods. And so, so I'm not too worried because I don't have any dependents under me that I have to worry about. I don't have any animals. I don't have any children. My husband is relatively self-sufficient. So I don't worry about anything really. So when you understand what makes things live or pass away or suffer from disease, It's not hard to develop a storyline based upon every single storyline that's out there and even the new ones, and not even come off as really concerned, because I've already saved myself. And I know what I can control, and I know what I can't control. And, you know, my family that I grew up with, they have to be responsible for themselves. Many of them are in California. Many of them cannot move because they're tied to so many things. They're rooted there for whatever reason. If they did move, they'd be looked at as something bad. Or they wouldn't get permission if they moved from somebody else because of what they are raising, children. And I am scared for people in California. I'm scared for people even in Ohio that don't understand where I'm coming from. I'm scared for a lot of people, but nothing I can do about it. It's nothing I can do about it. So then I have to just look at the reality, look at what I do. Hopefully some of you are in positions where you can save yourself and you're not rooted somewhere where you're forced to be this human sacrifice because of the expectations. And so we're in the fourth turning of an 80-year cycle. Every single decade, there's specific purposes for each decade. And there's always a formula. The fun is uncovering the formula, deciphering the code. Okay? Even making up new codes, because you are the code. You can either be a clone of something else or be slightly unique. And so, yeah, as far as the 49ers, okay, I already told you that story about that. I'm not going to go too much into that. Taylor Swift is like the Swift system. She brings in so much money because she's super influential. She's a representation of Silicon Valley and of Southern California because the entertainment industry. And she's a hot chick, okay? And so there's that. If you're going to work hard, work for yourself and reap the predominant benefits of working, okay? And then I said, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win because East meets West, passing over the baton. And we can figure that out. We'll see what happens. It can go either way. So, yeah, and that's it. All right, so we'll see what happens with the Super Bowl, because whoever wins, you can draw meaning from whoever wins. It's not just, oh, yeah, they're the best player. Okay. They're all very good players. All very good players. They're all equal to each other. Okay, so whoever wins and whoever loses, you can make it mean anything you want. It doesn't matter. The fact that the 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs in Missouri made it to the Super Bowl, either way, it's a welcoming of the new world, closing out the old world, and you can take it from the positive side or the negative side. You can take it from the side that if the Kansas City Chief wins, then it's welcoming in the Midwest, and there goes California, or if 49ers win, then it's closing out California, their last hurrah, welcoming in Kansas City Chiefs, because now it's time to say goodbye to a most influential world called California, which used to be the 7th largest economy in the world, and now it's going down to who knows what. So whichever side you want to look at, it doesn't matter. The fact that they're both there says a lot. The fact that Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles were in the Super Bowl last year, and the Eagles lost, says a lot about Kansas City and the Midwest, the new trade zone, and the fall of America into now merging in with the new world. Okay, so you can have any storyline you want, or you can just think it's just a game. But you see people on Facebook are like, yeah, it's all rigged, it's all rigged, it's all rigged. People are like, oh, really? What is it rigged for? Choose your own adventure. Have fun. Bye.